From an early age, I noticed the disdainful looks from my older siblings. This feeling culminated in my exclusion from all of their weddings, a decision that led me not to invite them to my own. What followed left them speechless. My name is Sabrina, and I am the youngest of 5 children. Anthony, Andrew, Evelyn, and Benjamin were so much older than me that at times, I felt like I belonged to another family. By the time I finally reached the age to form my first memories, they were already leaving home, going off to college, or starting their adult lives. It was as if I were an afterthought, a strange appendage they tolerated. Despite this, I loved them. When you're the youngest child, your older siblings seem like heroes. For me, as a child, Anthony was the coolest, the older brother who could do no wrong. Andrew was quieter and more serious, but I still adored him. Evelyn was my older sister, the one I always hoped would let me into her world and show me how to be like her. And Benjamin, the youngest of the older ones, was the one who seemed closest to me in age, but even he kept me at arm's length. The first time I truly felt how little I mattered to them was at Anthony's wedding. I was 10 years old, that awkward age where you feel old enough to participate in adult things but are still treated like a child. When Anthony and his fiancée Grace announced they were having a child-free wedding, I assumed it didn't apply to me. After all, I wasn't some random kid who would throw food or scream during the vows. I was his sister. I still remember the day my parents called me to talk. I was so excited I even asked my mom if I could wear one of her necklaces on the big day. That's when she said, "Anthony and Grace are having an adults-only wedding, Sabrina. You won't be able to go." I stared at her for a second, trying to process it. "But I'm not like other kids," I said, trying to argue. "I'll be quiet, I promise." She patted my head like I was a little puppy. "It's just for adults, sweetheart. You'll understand when you're older." I didn't understand at all. I cried in my room for hours. Anthony was my brother, and I wanted to see him get married. I wanted to be there to see Grace, whom I already considered my sister, walk down the aisle. But instead, my parents left me with a babysitter. I remember the feeling of staring at the clock that day, imagining everything I was missing. When Anthony came back from his honeymoon, I thought maybe he would mention something, maybe apologize for me not being able to go or tell me some funny story from the wedding. But he didn't. He acted as if I wasn't even part of it, as if I wasn't even worth acknowledging. 2 years later, Andrew got engaged. I was 12, and I thought things would be different. I was older, quieter, and very well behaved. I didn't complain or cause trouble, and I made sure everyone knew it. So when they said his wedding would also be child-free, I thought, okay, but this time I'll be invited. Nope. Once again, I heard the same speech. Andrew and his fiancée want the wedding to be adult-only, Sabrina. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal? It felt very personal when it happened twice. I tried not to cry this time. I was older, and I wanted to act more mature. I didn't beg or scream. I just sat there silently while my parents made their excuses. My mom even tried to console me. "You'll have your own wedding someday, and it will be wonderful, you'll see." But it didn't make me feel any better. I was starting to realize something. My brothers didn't see me as family, at least not in the way I saw them. When Evelyn got engaged, I was 15, a full-fledged teenager who wanted nothing more than to feel included. At first, Evelyn wasn't even planning on banning children from her wedding. She wanted everyone to come. But, of course, the family had to get involved. My aunts and uncles kept saying things like, "It's so refreshing to have a wedding without kids running around, and children just make things so chaotic." Eventually, Evelyn caved. The rule became, no one under 16. I was 15, so close it felt like a slap in the face. I went to Evelyn and asked, "Can I be an exception? I'm your sister. I'll be quiet, I promise." Evelyn looked at me with a serious expression and said, "If I make an exception for you, what will happen with the other kids? It wouldn't be fair." Fair? Are you kidding me? I lost my temper. I started yelling, "It's not fair that I can't go to any of your weddings. I'm not just some kid, I'm your sister." That's when my parents got involved. I was grounded for 6 months for disrespecting Evelyn and causing drama. 6 months. I spent most of that time in my room, stewing in my anger and hurt. When Benjamin got engaged, I was 17 and didn't even bother asking. I already knew I wouldn't be invited. And indeed, the announcement came. Child-free wedding. By that point, I was numb. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, and I didn't ask why. I just accepted it. But what really stung was that my cousin Charlotte, who had just turned 18, was invited. I heard about it through the family grapevine. Apparently, they thought 18 was the cutoff. The irony wasn't lost on me. Charlotte was only a few months older than me, but she got to go because she had reached the magical age of adulthood. When my parents asked why I didn't make a big deal about congratulating Benjamin, I just shrugged. I sent him a quick text, "Congrats, hope it's a great day." Then I locked myself in my room, like I always did. By that point, I had emotionally checked out. I realized I simply didn't matter to them. I wasn't their little sister. I was just some kid they'd barely thought about, and it hurt. It hurt a lot. Years passed after the last wedding. I stopped trying to fit into my siblings' lives because, honestly, I was tired. Tired of being the excluded one. Tired of being the younger sister no one cared about unless it was convenient for them. When I met Isaac, my now fiancé, I had already detached myself quite a bit from the family dynamic. I didn't expect much from anyone. Isaac was the first person to truly listen when I told him about my family. I remember sitting on his couch, recounting how I was banned from 4 of my siblings' weddings, and he looked genuinely shocked. "Wait, they didn't invite you? Not even when you were like 15. "Nope," I replied, trying to hide how much it still stung. "That's messed up." "You're their sister," he exclaimed, shaking his head for a moment before adding, "That's really wrong." I think it was in that moment that I realized how wrong it really was. I had spent so many years convincing myself it was normal. Child-free weddings sounded reasonable on paper. It wasn't like I was being deliberately targeted, right? But no, for times my family had chosen to exclude me. Not one sibling had even thought, "Hey, Sabrina should be there." It wasn't normal. So when Isaac and I got engaged a few years later, I knew one thing for sure. My wedding would be different. My wedding would be filled with people who actually cared about me, people who wanted to celebrate me, not just show up because it was expected of them. That's when I made my decision. I wouldn't invite my siblings. It wasn't some big dramatic moment. I didn't write an angry letter or announce it in the family group chat. I simply left them off the guest list. I knew it would eventually blow up, but I figured I would deal with it when the time came. The first sign of trouble came about 2 months before the wedding. My mom called me randomly one afternoon, acting strangely cheerful. I should have been suspicious. "So, Sabrina," she said in that voice she always used when she wanted something, "how are the wedding preparations going?" "Well," I replied cautiously, "pretty much everything is set." "That's great," she said, pausing for a moment before adding, "Your brothers and sister haven't received their invitations yet. Have you sent them out?" My heart started to race. I didn't want to have this conversation yet. "Yes, I have," I said, trying to sound casual. She didn't miss a beat. "Well, they haven't received any. Maybe they got lost in the mail." I sighed. "Mom, I didn't invite them." There was silence on the other end of the line, just a heavy, shocked pause. Then came the explosion. "What, Sabrina? How could you not invite your own family, your brothers? What is wrong with you?" I gripped the phone tighter and tried to stay calm. "They didn't invite me to their weddings, Mom. Not one of them. So I'm returning the favor. It's only fair." She sounded like I had just committed a crime. "That was different. You were young. They didn't want to hurt you." I laughed bitterly. "Well, it hurt anyway. And now I'm tired of pretending it didn't." She immediately started with the guilt trip. "Sabrina, you're being spiteful. Family is family. You don't just cut them out like this. What will people think?" And there it was. What will people think? My mother's favorite concern. I cut her off before she could say anything more. "I don't care what people think, Mom. This is my wedding, and I'm only inviting people who care about me. They didn't care enough to include me in their big days, so I don't see why they deserve to be at mine." She hung up on me. I wasn't surprised. That night, the family group chat blew up. It started with Evelyn being her usual passive-aggressive self. "Hi, did something happen with the mail? We haven't received our invitations yet." Then came Andrew, always direct. "What's going on? Why weren't we invited?" I stared at my phone for a long time, debating whether to respond or not. Part of me wanted to lay it all out, to say exactly how much they had hurt me over the years, but another part of me saw no point. They wouldn't understand. They never had. So I said nothing. I just left them on read. Isaac noticed I was quiet during dinner and asked what was wrong. I showed him the messages, and he shook his head. You don't owe them an explanation, love. They made their choices. Yeah, but... My voice trailed off. They're going to make me out to be the villain, I know it. Let them, he said firmly. You know the truth, that's all that matters. The next day, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. I didn't even need to ask what they wanted. My mother barged in the moment I opened the door. What are you thinking, Sabrina? Not inviting your own brothers to your wedding? What kind of person does that? I tried to remain calm, even though my patience was wearing thin. Mom, I already said they didn't deem me important enough to include in their weddings, so I'm not including them in mine. My father finally spoke, his voice stern. You're being childish, Sabrina. You're holding on to something that happened years ago. That's when I lost it. I was a child when they did it, Dad. I begged to be at their weddings, and all of them excluded me. Don't talk to me about being childish when I was the one left crying at home 4 times. They didn't know what to say. My mother looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me this time. You can keep defending them if you want, but I'm not changing my mind. If they had cared about me, they would have shown it back then. They left in a huff, frustrated. In the following days, the messages from my siblings got nastier. Andrew called me selfish. Evelyn said I was ruining the family. Benjamin didn't even bother to sugarcoat it. You're being petty, Sabrina. Grow up. I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. Isaac held me one night as I scrolled through their messages and said, I'm proud of you, for standing up for yourself. And for the first time, I felt proud of myself too. After the initial wave of family drama, I expected things to quiet down. I figured they would grumble amongst themselves for a while, maybe complain to some distant cousins, and then move on. That's usually how things went when my family didn't get their way. But I underestimated how big of a deal they would make this. It started small. Evelyn, of course, couldn't resist posting a passive-aggressive status on Facebook. Family is forever, even when some people forget what that word means. I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Isaac was scrolling on his phone next to me on the couch, and when I showed him the post, he just shook his head. She's like 14, I muttered, trying to ignore it. I told myself it didn't matter. I knew the truth, and I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong, but it still stung. It's hard not to feel hurt when your own sister goes out of her way to publicly jab at you. It didn't stop there. Over the next few days, little digs started appearing in our extended family group chat. I had muted it ages ago, but Isaac still checked his phone. One afternoon he said, Sabrina, you might want to see this. The messages have been flying. Evelyn, it's so sad when family starts prioritizing petty grievances over love. Andrew, I just don't understand. I thought we were better than this. And then Anthony, good old, I'm the oldest and know best Anthony, decided to weigh in. I never realized how much bitterness you were holding on to, Sabrina. It's really sad that you're ruining relationships over something that happened years ago. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. They didn't get it. They still didn't get it. They made it sound like I was blowing a minor issue out of proportion, like they hadn't spent my entire life excluding me. I wanted to reply. I wanted to type out every single thing they had done and make them see how hypocritical they were being, but I knew better. Arguing with them would just give them more ammunition. They would twist my words, saying I was being dramatic or unstable or whatever else they needed to say to avoid taking responsibility. Instead, I did the one thing they never expected. I left the group chat that night. My mother called me. I knew she had heard about the group chat incident because she started yelling the moment I picked up. Sabrina, what is wrong with you? Hi, Mom, I said coldly. Don't start with that attitude, she snapped back. Do you know what you've done? Your brothers are heartbroken. You're tearing this family apart. Heartbroken? I scoffed. They ignored me my entire childhood, but now they're heartbroken? Give me a break. You're being so spiteful, she said. You've always been like this, holding on to grudges and making everything about you. That's when I lost my temper again. I'm the one holding on to grudges, Mom? I was 10 years old when Anthony got married. 10. I cried because I wanted to be there, and all of you told me I wasn't important enough to be included. And it didn't stop there. It happened again and again and again. I begged to be at Evelyn's wedding, and she told me no because it wouldn't be fair. That was years ago, she said dismissively. Yes, and I still live with how it made me feel. All of you decided I wasn't important enough back then. Why would you suddenly deserve a front row seat in my life now? She had no answer for that. Instead, she tried to flip the script. This isn't about the weddings, Sabrina. This is about you pushing everyone away because you're bitter. Isaac's probably encouraging you, isn't he? I groaned. Mom, stop blaming Isaac. This has nothing to do with him. This is about me finally realizing that I deserve more than being treated like I don't matter. Her voice softened, like she was trying to play the concerned mother. Sabrina, you don't understand. Family is all you'll have in the end. Friends and partners come and go, but your family is forever. No, I said firmly. Family should care about you, should love and support you. That's not what you guys were for me. She started to cry, big, dramatic sobs that I knew were more about making me feel guilty than anything else. You'll regret this one day, Sabrina, she said between tears. You'll see. I don't think I will, I said quietly before hanging up. The following week, things escalated. I blocked Evelyn and Andrew on social media because I couldn't stand the constant snide remarks. My mother called Isaac twice, apparently hoping to talk some sense into him. He didn't answer. Then Anthony sent me a long email, yes, an actual email, about forgiveness and the importance of family unity. He even had the audacity to quote some Bible verse about letting go of anger. I didn't reply. Isaac and I sat down one night, and I just vented about everything. It's like they're determined to pretend I'm the problem. They can't see how wrong it is that they ignored me for years and then freaked out when I finally stood up for myself. You know what it is? Isaac said. They're not mad that they weren't invited. They're mad that they can't control you anymore. That hit me like a punch to the gut. He was right. My whole life, my family had treated me like an afterthought, like someone they could dismiss whenever it suited them. But now that I was doing something for myself, something they couldn't control, they couldn't handle it. They'll get over it eventually, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. And then Isaac said something that really stuck with me. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but either way, it's not your problem. He was right. For the first time, I realized I didn't owe my family anything. Not my time, not my attention, and certainly not an invitation to my wedding. A week later, my father sent me a short, guilt-tripping text. Sabrina, your mother isn't doing well. She's very upset about all of this. Maybe you could reconsider. I stared at it for a long time before replying. Maybe she should have thought about that before ignoring me all those years. I hit send and then blocked his number. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The weeks leading up to my wedding were a strange mix of excitement and tension. On one hand, I was thrilled to finally marry Isaac and have the day I had dreamed of since I was a little girl. On the other hand, the drama with my family still loomed like an unwelcome guest. My parents had stopped calling me directly, probably because I had blocked my mother's number after her last tirade, but that didn't stop other people. My aunt called me out of the blue. I hadn't spoken to her in years, so I was immediately suspicious when her name popped up on my phone. I answered, and she got straight to the point. Sabrina, dear, I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this, she said in her sweet but condescending tone. Family is family. It's not right to leave your brothers out of your wedding. I sighed, gripping my phone a little tighter. Aunt Eleanor, it's not just about the wedding. This has been going on for years. I'm not changing my mind. But it's family, she insisted, as if that word should fix everything. I'm sure they didn't mean to hurt you back then. Can't you just let it go and be the bigger person? I closed my eyes, trying not to explode. Being the bigger person doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It means knowing when to put yourself first. There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear her sigh dramatically. Well, I just hope you don't regret this one day or that you miss your family and they're not there. I said nothing, just hung up. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up feeling a strange combination of peace and nervousness. It wasn't the normal, what if something goes wrong wedding day jitters. It was more like I was waiting for something to happen. I knew my family wasn't invited, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they would find a way to intrude on the day somehow. But Asake, being the amazing guy he is, refused to let me dwell on it. When I told him about my worries while we were getting ready separately, he just smiled and said, "Sweetheart, this day is about us, nothing else matters. If anyone tries to ruin it, I'll personally escort them out." That made me laugh, and for the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. The venue we chose was perfect, small and intimate, a garden surrounded by flowers, fairy lights strung between the trees, and a little gazebo where we would say our vows. I didn't want a huge, elaborate wedding. I wanted something that felt real and full of love, and that's exactly what we got. My closest friends were there, along with a few distant relatives who had always been genuinely kind to me over the years. It felt right. As I stood in front of the mirror, putting the final touches on my dress, my maid of honor, my best friend Scarlett, walked in and grinned. "You look incredible, Sa." "Thanks," I replied softly, feeling a lump in my throat. Scarlett sat down on the edge of the couch and watched me for a moment. "You okay?" I hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, I don't know, sad, I guess. Not about today, today is perfect, but about the fact that my family isn't here." She frowned and leaned forward. "Sabrina, it's okay to feel that. Just because you made the right choice doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." Her words hit me hard. I turned to look at her, tears welling up in my eyes. I just wish they had cared, you know? I wish they had fought for me when I was a kid, and they never did. Scarlett stood up and hugged me tightly. "You don't need their approval. You have people who love you. Focus on that." I nodded, taking a deep breath. She was right. Today wasn't about my family. It was about me and Asake. When the ceremony started, I was so overwhelmed by the beauty of everything that I forgot all about everything else. I remember standing at the end of the aisle, looking at Asake and thinking, this is it. This is what happiness feels like. As I walked towards him, a sense of freedom washed over me. I wasn't the forgotten little sister anymore. I wasn't the child who begged to be included and was turned away. I was a bride surrounded by people who genuinely loved me and wanted to see me happy. The vows were perfect. Asake promised to love me, protect me, and always be by my side, and I promised him the same. When we said "I do," there wasn't a dry eye in the audience, including mine. The reception was everything I had hoped for. We laughed, we ate, we danced until our feet ached. My friends gave toasts to us, sharing funny stories and heartfelt wishes for our future. Asake's parents, who had always been so kind to me, told me how proud they were to have me as part of their family. At one point, I stepped away from the crowd just to soak it all in. I stood at the edge of the garden, looking at the fairy lights twinkling in the trees and the people laughing together, and I felt so complete. For so many years, I had believed the lie my family had told me, that I didn't matter, that I wasn't important enough to be a part of their lives. But standing there, watching all these people who truly cared about me, I realized something. I do matter to the people who actually deserve to know me. Later that night, as the reception started to wind down, one of my cousins pulled me aside. "Hey, Sabrina, I probably shouldn't say this, but..." I groaned. "What is it now?" She looked sheepish. "Your mom and Evelyn apparently threw some kind of dinner party tonight, like an alternative to your wedding." I stared at her for a second, then burst out laughing. "You're kidding me?" She shook her head. "I know, it's pathetic, I just thought you should know." I shook my head, still chuckling. "It's fine, let them have their pity party." I hope the food was good. I could tell my cousin expected me to be upset, but honestly, I wasn't. If anything, it was proof that I had made the right decision. My family had spent my whole life excluding me and then trying to justify it. Now that I was setting a boundary, they couldn't handle it. At the end of the night, Asake and I shared one last dance as everyone gathered around us. As we swayed together, I whispered, "I'm so glad we did this." He smiled down at me. "Me too, love. This is just the beginning." And for the first time, I believed it. My family wasn't there. They didn't get to see the best day of my life. But that was their loss, not mine. Because as I looked around the room, surrounded by love and laughter, I realized I had everything I had ever needed, and none of it came from them. I thought the worst was over after the wedding. I really did. The day had been perfect, everything I had hoped for and more, and I felt like I had finally moved past my family's nonsense. I hadn't missed them at the ceremony, hadn't spent a single second wondering what it would have been like if they were there. I was surrounded by people who loved me, and that was enough. But if there's one thing I've learned about my family, it's that they don't like being ignored. It's almost as if they couldn't handle the fact that I was happy without them, so they decided to stir the pot one more time. It started with a text from Evelyn a week after the wedding. Of course, it was Evelyn. She was always the first to throw a stone when it came to family drama. Saw some pictures from your wedding. Can't believe it was in a garden, looked rather casual, but I guess that's what you wanted. I stared at the message, dumbfounded. She couldn't even pretend to be nice. It wasn't enough for her to just leave me alone. She had to find something to criticize. I was tempted to reply with something snarky, something about how her wedding might have been more elegant, but at least mine wasn't filled with fake smiles and people who didn't care about me. But I held back. I didn't owe her a response. A few days later, I started getting messages from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Apparently, Evelyn, Anthony, and Andrew were on some kind of campaign to paint me as the villain. My Aunt Eleanor, yes, the same one who tried to guilt-trip me before the wedding, sent me another text. Sabrina, I don't know what's gone on between you and your brothers, but they are very hurt. Evelyn says she's tried to reach out, and you're ignoring her. Maybe it's time to let the past go. I sighed and rolled my eyes. How many times would I have to explain this? How many people did my siblings need to involve in this mess before they realized I wouldn't budge? Isaac noticed I was frustrated and sat down beside me. Another guilt trip? He asked, glancing at my phone. Yeah, Aunt Eleanor this time. She says they're hurting. He snorted. They're hurting because they can't control you anymore. I smiled slightly. He wasn't wrong. I just don't understand. They ignored me for years. I begged to be included in their lives, and they shut me out. Now, suddenly, I'm the bad guy for setting boundaries. It's always like that, he said softly. When you start protecting yourself, the people who hurt you are the first ones to cry about it. The lowest point came a few days later when my mother showed up unannounced. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Isaac and I were having a lazy day, making pajama brunch, laughing at our burnt pancakes. We heard a knock at the door, and I froze. I just knew it was her. And sure enough, I opened the door to find my mother standing there, as dramatic as ever. Sabrina, she said, her voice already carrying that familiar tone of disappointment. We need to talk. I sighed. Mom, now isn't a good time. She didn't care, pushing the door open slightly, trying to step inside. Isaac appeared behind me, gently placing a hand on my shoulder in support. Sabrina, please, she continued. This has gone on long enough. Your brothers are devastated. Devastated? Do you really think this is how family should act? I gritted my teeth, keeping my voice level. You can't just show up here and lecture me, Mom. I invited the people who care about me to my wedding. They weren't included, and that's on them, not me. Her face fell into that familiar expression of disbelief, like she couldn't comprehend how I could possibly stand up to her. You don't mean that. They love you, Sabrina. They're your family. No, Mom, I said firmly. Family doesn't make you feel small. Family doesn't exclude you when you're a child and then demand to be a part of your life when it's convenient for them. I spent my whole life trying to prove I mattered to them, and they never cared. I'm done. She blinked, stunned into silence for the first time. I could tell she wanted to argue, but Isaac stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. I think it's time for you to leave, he said simply. My mother looked between the two of us, her face a mixture of anger and sadness. You'll regret this, Sabrina, she said, her voice now soft, like she was delivering a prophecy. You'll miss us one day, and we won't be there. I met her gaze, unwavering. No, Mom, I won't. Isaac closed the door behind her, and for a moment, I just stood there, trying to process everything. I thought I would feel guilty, but I didn't. I felt relieved. The next day, I got a text from Andrew. Mom said she came to talk to you, and you slammed the door in her face. Real mature, Sabrina. You've become someone I don't even recognize. I read the text aloud to Isaac, who just shook his head. Block him. You don't need this. And I did. One by one, I blocked each sibling and relative who decided to jump on the guilt trip bandwagon. I realized something important that day. I didn't owe them my time, my energy, or even an explanation. For years, they had made me feel invisible. Now I was taking back control. The following weeks were peaceful, for the first time in a long time. Without the constant messages and passive-aggressive comments, I finally felt like I could breathe. Isaac and I focused on settling into married life, decorating our little apartment, and planning our future. One evening, we were sitting on the couch watching some silly movie, and Isaac turned to me. Do you ever regret it? Not having them at the wedding. I thought for a moment before shaking my head. No. I thought I would, but I don't. I spent so long trying to earn their approval. And for what? I don't miss them. I don't miss feeling like I wasn't good enough. He smiled and squeezed my hand. Good? You deserve better. And he was right. I did deserve better. A month after the wedding, I received one last message. This time it was from Evelyn's number, sent through another phone since I had blocked her. You've destroyed this family, Sabrina. I hope you're happy. I stared at the screen for a second before deleting the message. I didn't even feel angry, just done. Because I was happy, for the first time in my life. I wasn't chasing their approval, wasn't begging for scraps of love and attention. I was surrounded by people who cared about me, and that was enough. It always had been. What would you have done in Sabrina's place? Would you have invited your siblings to your wedding or not? Tell us in the comments below, we'd love to hear. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share this video to reach more people, and subscribe to the channel for more family stories.